Hello everybody, how are you all doing today? Welcome back to another session of another learning session of Unreal Engine 4. My friend Streambro Jim and I are learning how to use the Unreal Engine. We are still in the working with audio. We're going to be continuing the attenuation section, picking up from where we left off, the attenuation for listener focus. Right now, give me a second. I'm gonna hop on right into Jim's stage, but I'll do that. Gonna sell out a little bit. In the description below, you'll find a link to the Poker Shop, where you can purchase energy mixes, sleep mixes, hydration mixes, shakers, and even stickers. And if you use creator code BLACKHEART, you will get a 10% discount and help support the channel in the process. Anyways, here we go. I think he's already on.
But I mean, it's still meant to try to help out, mainly streamers, but I mean, it's there for
He's talking about Team Robot right now.
for others to come in as well.
My audio's actually on.
Alright, I see that Blackheart has joined the stage, so let's go ahead and get him to speak here. Gonna close down my music. Gonna make sure that
Hello there. How you doing, Jim?
There we go. Everybody can hear him now. Hey there, Blackheart. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing okay. Just having to deal with the heat along with the kitty cat.
No, the heat and the kitty cat's causing all the heat, huh? Okay.
She's just a little sick from the heat, that's all.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I hope the kitty cat feels better.
No, she will eventually.
Yeah. Alright. How's your day been so far?
Okay, just hot.
Yep. Well, good to hear. Alright, man. So, ready to get into some more Unreal, and then later on tonight we'll be going on to Terraria. So if anybody's watching this and you might want to watch some gameplay in Terraria,
modded Terraria, to be more precise.
True. Well, Terraria, Terraria and then modded Terraria for me, modded Terraria for Blackheart, but Terraria nonetheless.
Yep.
So, but yeah, that's later tonight. But, okay, ready to get started?
Yep.
Alright. So, last we left off at the attenuation listener focus. So again, it appears to be a fairly lengthy topic overall.
Yeah.
Until we get down to the attenuation reverb send. Hopefully they explain well enough, but we'll see. Alright. So they do give a screenshot of the attenuation listener focus menu items, or the UI for it, which is fantastic. That helps out.
Yep.
Although where it is in terms of the sound media, don't really know, but I mean we can probably look that up later anyway. So
yeah,
or we'll see it at some point. So. So it's not like we're never gonna be seeing it in our development with Unreal, being with. So, but let's move on here. This session controls some additional processing that you can use to the focus behavior of sounds. There may be times when you want a sound to be more prominent depending on its position relative to the listener's rotation. For example, you may have certain sounds that belong to a special pickup item that is usually intentionally masked slightly by the rest of the mix. But if the player is looking directly at it, or nearly directly at it, the pickup item, you may want to bring the sound up in the mix slightly to accentuate it. Alternatively, you may want to set this listener focus behavior up across all your sounds in order to try and emulate the perceptual differences that arise from the fact that we tend to focus our attention on sounds that are directly in front of us. Okay. Um. So. So basically, when you're, when you're like moving around a mouse or, controller or something along those lines, and you know, if you see if the character sees something like directly in front of it that is a helpful item, then it will bring up some form of sound saying, "Hey, I'm here," kind of thing. So, um, now whether or not that goes through all the channels, or whether it's like left and right, or the sound comes from the front speakers, don't really know. They're not really covering that really in this case.
No.
So they're just basically saying, hey, this sound can be different from the rest of the submix, I'm assuming, um so that it will be distinctive. So at least from that first paragraph, at least. So
Probably.
um anything that you might want to add or discuss on that a little bit more, or are you good?
I couldn't think of an example. Each when we open Genshin chest, that we hear the items that drop every time. They always have that little sound that we can hear.
True. I don't know if that is um I'm not sure if that's exactly the what this is kind of.
Or maybe ammo, picking up ammo maybe from the first person shooters, another example I can think of.
I don't know if this is the exact. Okay,
Yeah,
don't
they
get me
use
wrong.
example of like picking
The
things up, like picking that they said
yeah,
that
yeah,
for
yeah.
example picking things up, and those in most games do make a sound. Like when you pick up ammo, you hear like some kind of sound.
But the point that this one's making right at this moment in time is that it's slightly different than the actual, like, you're picking it up. Okay, they're talking about if the player's looking directly at the pickup item. Not saying that they're picking up the item directly, that they're actually looking at the item. So so what's a good um scenario for this? Um Remember that yeah, yesterday I was doing that one scenario with the trying to go through the cleaning the sites and stuff like that in Genshin Impact, right?
Right.
You're given a lens that you have to kind of look at those statues. So when you're looking at said statue, it kind of creates a sound when you're looking at it. I think that's what it's talking about. Not something where it's like you're picking up an item or the item's dropping or anything along those lines. It's something where you're like you're looking at the item, and it suddenly kind of has some form of sound associated with it, basically saying that this is useful, this is necessary. Um, it's like you might be hearing like a like a gentle hum around the area, but until you actually look directly at the item, will the hum be like distinct or extremely like uh, uh, noticeable at that point, right? Um, not quite, and it's not quite like the caches in Warframe. If you know the caches, if you remember the caches in Warframe, you hear the slight hum of the caches, but I mean, obviously the hum generates more when the closer you get to it. But what I'm saying is that if you were like if you like saw the cache in your view, then if it had like a distinct like da 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 or something like that for finding that cache, I think that's what they're kind of talking about by the listener focus. Do you get what I'm saying?
I guess so.
I think that's what they're trying to do. I mean, don't get me wrong. The dropping of items and stuff like that. Obviously, that you still need that in the game, but I don't know if that's exactly what they're trying to go for concerning the listener focus. I could be completely wrong. Don't get me wrong. What you just described could be well within um that scope. And I might be right, but at the same time, you know, again, you might be right as well. So I don't really know, you know. But it seems as though it's trying to focus more along the lines of you hear the sound if you see it. Um, Trying to think. There's like some there's like some games where it's like if you um like some hidden items or something like that around, and you're trying to like find like a ghost or something like that, you have to like put on like special goggles to try to look around, and suddenly you spot the ghost, and there's that sound. I think that's what it's trying to go for in this particular case of listener focus, but again, I'm not sure. So shall we move on?
Yeah.
Again, both could be completely acceptable. I don't know. We'll see. Well, maybe I'll describe it more as we proceed. Uh, so with these settings, you can control the angles that determine whether a sound is classed as being in or out of focus, the amount of scaling to apply to a sound's distance calculations, and priority settings based on whether it is in or out of focus, the amount of attenuation to apply in and out of focus sounds, and the interpolation speed for these settings as sounds move in and out of focus. In the image below, the green cone depicts the angular area in which objects are classed as being in focus. The red cone depicts the transition area. Anything beyond this is classed as being out of focus. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm not. I feel like both scenarios could still work with that, so I don't know. We'll move on, I guess.
I guess.
Unless there's something else did you want to say something?
No.
Or
My only guess on this is that maybe while it's looking at it, maybe this sound maybe a little louder than when you're not looking at it, sort of as to imply you're looking at something. That's my only guess. Like audio is being
Yeah.
focused at something you're looking at.
Yeah, I think the what um I think another way to maybe think about it, if I'm, if I am getting this correctly, say like you're in a room, like you're in a party or something like that. You have a lot of people kind of talking about different subjects or something like that, right? A lot of it is just background noise. You don't know exactly what everybody's kind of talking about. You don't know what, people are discussing or something. It's background noise, right?
Right.
Um, until you focus in on a conversation, would you really kind of pick up as to what they're really saying, right? Like you come in towards like a group, a couple of people talking, and suddenly what they're talking about kind of comes more into focus. So now you're able to kind of hear exactly what they're kind of discussing, even though, the other discussions outside of you might still be considered, background noise or, background conversations that you might not necessarily be hearing very well. So that's what I'm kind of thinking that this is kind of trying to do a little bit, just in multiple ways, with objects, kind of thing. So,
Probably.
um, that's the only thing that I can really kind of imagine. But again, I don't really know. We'll have to, obviously a lot of this will probably need our testing to really kind of get good idea about it.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, obviously, if we have a good, um, if we have a game that uses these, then we'll definitely need to learn more about it. But for right now, um, we don't necessarily need to worry about it too much. So,
Hmm.
at least not yet.
Not yet.
Enable listener focus. This property is used to enable or disable the listener focus system. If true, the sound will check to see whether it is in or out of focus and apply various scaling factors accordingly. If false, then the sound will simply behave according to its usual attenuation, distance, and priority settings. Okay. Focus zenith. This property determines the zenith horizontal rotation angle that a sound needs to be within in order to be classed as in focus, and is expressed in degrees. An angle of 0 degrees would be directly in front of the listener's forward vector. So, if they're looking straight at it, then that would be an angle of 0 degrees. But um, anything outside of that, like if you're looking at something behind that particular object, then it would be out of focus if that's the case, right?
Right.
What happened, what happens to the item that's out of focus? Who knows? Maybe, maybe you're like, maybe you have like a directional microphone. You're looking at one person's conversation. You're hearing exactly what they say. You move to another person's conversation, and the first person's conversation turns into, the peanuts wah 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 or something like that. Who knows? You know. Now that would be an interesting, um, uh, little silly process of, you know, hey, you need to hear, you're trying to, you know, get like spy information, so you need to, try to listen in on conversations, trying to pick up like the keywords or something like that as quickly as you can. But every time you look away from a conversation, you hear the wah 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 wah. Although, um, you know, trying to do something like that might also potentially bring on down the wrath of you know the copyright holders for peanuts. I don't know. All right. Um, non-focus zenith. This property determines the zenith horizontal rotation angle that a sound needs to be beyond in order to be classed as out of focus, and is expressed in degrees. An angle of 0 degrees would be directly in front of the listener's forward vector. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. I wonder how you kind of factor that in. So, um, you know, just kind of as uh, a preview here. You have the focus zenith and the non-focus zenith, right? You look at the picture about that one actor, like looking at the block, and you have like the cones in front of them, right? And that's apparently where the sound is coming from, so you can kind of hear that. So, um, for the focus zenith, that would be the green or like the yellow cone, I guess, turning into the green. So then that would be, something that is in focus and therefore heard better. And, the red cone being, outside of it, like, you have like a focus of 30, non-focus is 60, right? So the non-focus is 60 degrees, the focus is 30. So basically you have like 15 degrees on both sides of the 30 that is kind of outside of focus, I guess. Um, but um, you know, how does it determine, like, will you know, the focus always be necessary to be less than the non-focus? I mean, it would seem a little silly to have a number in the focus that's larger than the non-focus, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Unless, of course, they have like some way of like here's here's the large in focus, and on the right hand side is all the out of focus or something like that. Maybe I don't. That seems a little odd.
Yeah. I guess I will need a bit of testing.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me wonder if you can do something along the lines of like, instead of having the in focus being, right dead center, like, you're always going to be seeing it like right in front of you. I wonder if there's a way where you can kind of have it like, hey, you have like really great hearing in the right ear, but really bad hearing in the left. So therefore, your focus, on the right hand side of the angle is, within focus, and everything beyond that is out of focus, right?
Right.
You could do something along those lines, but I wouldn't really know how they would be able to do that based off of the values that you see here at the listener focus. I don't know if there's a way to do that per se.
Hmm.
Hmm. Like there's nothing in the settings that I can see where it's basically saying, hey, you know, the focus is on the right side, the focus is on the left side, or something along those lines. I don't really know. I don't really see anything along those lines. So,
No.
mm. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
All right. Focus distance scale. This property defines a scaling value that will be applied to the sound's calculated distance from the listener, and therefore the attenuated volume of the sound. A value of less than 1 here will result in the sound appearing to be closer to the listener than it actually is when it is in focus. Oh, okay. Interesting. So, uh, so if so if you're like looking at it, directly, then if you have less than 1, you're basically looking as though you're looking at it, but it sounds as though you're like standing right next to it. So interesting. This definitely feels like a one of those like long distance microphones kind of thing. Like you're trying to listen in on a conversation from a specific
Yeah,
like
similar to
area.
Metal Gear's directional microphone.
Yeah, it's definitely giving me those vibes.
Yeah.
So, all right. Non-focus distance scale. This property defines a scaling value that will be applied to the sound's calculated distance from the listener and therefore the attenuated volume of the sound. Value greater than 1 here will result in the sound appearing to be further away from the listener than it actually is when it is out of focus. Okay. Um, hmm, interesting. All right. Moving on.
Yeah.
Or is there anything that you want to discuss more?
Not really, no.
All right. Focus priority scale. Um, wait, hold on. Okay, I was about to say, sorry. Um, I'm, I didn't have my chat up, so I was like going, oh wait, I need to keep my chat and focus so I can make sure that, I can see anybody's messages. So, sorry about that. Um, okay. Focus priority scale. This property defines a scaling value that will be applied to the sound's priority setting, which is defined within the sound itself. Value greater than 1 here will result in the sound's priority setting increasing when it is in focus. Okay, what's the difference between that and the other one?
I don't know.
What? It's like, um,
I guess the only thing I can think of is if there's multiple sounds in the direction you're facing and you want to give priority to something specific, I guess.
mm, maybe. Um, maybe it's very similar to like the directional microphone, but instead of hearing all the background sounds of like a helicopter taking off or something like that, you're just hearing the conversation.
Yeah.
So it has the priority more on the conversation and not necessarily like the helicopter in the background or something like that. Maybe,
Maybe, yeah.
right?
Yeah, it
I don't know.
does give that feeling.
Hmm. At least we hope.
Mhm.
Non-focus priority scale. This property defines a scaling value that will be applied to the sound's priority setting, which is defined within the sound itself. A value of less than 1.0 here will result in the sound's priority setting decreasing when it is out of focus. Okay. Focus volume attenuation. This property defines scaling value that which will be applied to the sound's volume when it is classed as being in focus. This occurs after the sound's initial volume has been scaled relative to its distance from the listener according to the attenuation distance settings above. Value greater than 1 here will result in sounds being boosted in volume when in focus. Again, it's another one where it's like, well, you know, what's really the difference between these three here? You know, focus distance scale, focus priority scale, and focus volume attenuation all feels as though, you know, they're very similar in nature to each other. So it's like, you know, what really changes, you know, get a sound based off of, you know, if you're changing those values, you know, what really, like, you know, what's like the main difference between these three? Because it very much feels as though it's pretty much the exact same you know, focus. You know, it's like, hey, I'm gonna repeat this particular section over and over and over and over again, but it's gonna mean the exact same thing. That's what I'm kind of getting out of this for this time. And I'm sure that that's not the case, but
you know, we might need to find someone that explains a little better.
Yeah. You know, what's the difference between, you know, these three so far? You know, obviously there might, you know, I can see like right down below enable focus interpolation. So it's like, okay, you know, what's the difference? You know, you know, how is these different, you know, concerning others? You know, I don't know. Okay. Excuse me. Alright. Non-focus volume attenuation. This property defines a scaling value that will be applied to the sound's volume when it is classed as being out of focus. This occurs after the sound's initial volume has been scaled relative to its distance from the listener according to the attenuation distance settings above. A value less than 1 here will result in the sounds being reduced in volume when out of focus. So, you know, obviously, you know, attenuation is kind of meant for, like, you know, the sounds and based off of distance and so on and so forth, you know, and how we hear said sounds, right? So maybe they're trying to basically say, like, hey, this is, you know, instead of, like, maybe you're hearing like all these sounds in this particular area, but because you're focusing on that one specific location, then that sound somehow becomes more prevalent, as though like everything else around it just kind of fades in the background. You know, not sure. Alright. Shall I move on, or do you have anything you want to add to that?
Not that I can think of right now.
Okay. Okay, enable focus interpolation. This property allows you to enable or disable the focus interpolation system. This can be used to smoothly transition between settings when sounds move between being in and out of focus. If true, interpolation will be applied to the various settings above when moving between being in or out of focus. If false, the system will simply switch between the settings defined above when the sound being between being in and out of focus. Right. What? It doesn't seem like there's any difference between these two, the true and false statements. Am I missing something here? I mean, obviously they did use, different words and whatnot, but it just feels like they're saying the same exact thing with the true and false. Maybe I'm being stupid or something like that. I don't know, but it just feels like they're saying
Maybe
the same
like
thing.
if true, it will use all the settings combined, but if false, it will only use like switch between them, but not use them at the same time. Later, the keywords I'm taking is on true, apply the various settings above, while false, switch between settings.
What? Um, I think you're on the right track on that, because looking at the previous paragraph there, it says this can be used to smoothly transition between settings and sounds move between in and out of focus. So, so instead of like a harsh cutoff, like um, like you're switching between like the conversation and the helicopter, right? You're
Right.
kind of going back and forth. If it was smooth, you'd be still, as you kind of lose focus on the conversation, kind of reduce down in volume, whereas the helicopter would start being more on focus and louder. Whereas if you didn't have it, then that smooth transition is gone, and therefore, you know, um, as soon as looking away the conversation, looking away the conversation, looking away the conversation, bam, helicopter sounds.
Yeah.
Something along those
There
lines.
wouldn't be a
So
proper transition there.
yeah, you'd lose the conversation, and then suddenly helicopter sounds. Um, so maybe that's what's kind of going on here.
That's what I'm getting from that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully that's correct. If someone comes along and says no, this is how you do it, then we welcome that, obviously.
Yep.
You know, again, you know, I don't think we said it at the very beginning of these videos, but if there's anybody that is very familiar with Unreal, and you're watching this and you're like or maybe not even Unreal, if you're a sound editor, sound designer, sound engineer, okay, and you're watching us go through this, and you're like going, oh, I know how, I know what they're missing here. If you can explain it, that would be very much welcomed. So
Yep.
go ahead and put it in our chat right now during our live streams, or leave it out in a comment for our videos when we upload these to YouTube later. So either way helps. Okay, and if you want to add it to Blackheart's, he'll give it to me. If you want to add it to mine, I'll give it to him. Or if you want to add it to both, that's perfectly fine as well. So, Um, Alright. Next couple here. Focus attack interp sleep. This property defines the interpolation speed used when moving from being out of focus to in focus. Smaller values here result in quicker transition times. Okay. Maybe this has more to do with the, that example that I just kind of talked about by like the, like you're switching between the conversation and the helicopter
Yeah,
sound focus.
yeah, how fast do we want to get out of that focus? That would be pretty much.
Right. Maybe that's kind of what's going on there. Maybe. I don't know. Like the if we scroll all the way back to the top, right? The attenuation functions kind of thing. You know, one would think that if you're losing focus, it would be more of like a linear decrease kind of thing. While one is decreasing over time as you kind of move away from the focus, another one is also in a linear kind of increasing as they're getting in focus, right?
Right.
One would think that that would be kind of like the main process of that, but that setting that they're kind of talking about by how fast feels more like an inverse kind of function, like, it will drop off quickly and the more you get out of focus on it.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the same
Yeah.
way on that, or?
Yeah, it does feel that way.
It's the only thing that I can think of right at this moment in time. I don't know if that's that's indeed true, but it feels like that's the route that we're kind of going with on that. So I don't know. Okay. Focus release interp sleep or speed. This property defines the interpolation speed used when moving from being in focus to out of focus. Smaller values here result in quicker transition times. So basically, it's the same exact thing here. So for the attack, it's more like, when you want something to be in focus, you have the inverse increasing over time, right? But for the out of focus, you have like the inverse, reducing down, falling down to a lower value.
Yeah.
So, of course, you'd probably want to have like these two values active for the same sound, so that it will determine like, hey, do I use the when it gets in focus, it will have more it will increase in volume when it goes in focus, and then when you're like leaving that sound, that's when you have the release in question. So at least that's the only thing that I can think of right at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna be going on to the reverb. It is getting later on. Shall I continue to proceed through this, or shall we just go ahead and stop it now? Because this is
Let's
getting
stop
into...
it. Yeah, because the reverb has quite a bit to cover as well.
Yeah. I mean, I know that I'm kind of going slow about this a little bit, but I want to try to understand it too.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, for that part
I
that we
don't.
just read, the best example I can think of is the Metal Gear directional microphone.
Yeah,
How
yeah. It's the
that
only
work,
thing
it
that.
feels like that's sort of what it's explaining a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of fearing as well. But again, I don't really know perfectly, but I figure that that's you know what they're kind of going after in that regard. Um, yeah, I know that I'm going slow on it. But at the same time, like I said, I just want to make sure that I learn this because um, you know, if you
Yeah,
know,
we at least
I,
understand it to a certain point.
yeah. Well, I mean, I want to make sure that if we ever get to designing a game that might actually need it, I want to be able to remember, like, didn't Unreal have this system where you can do this kind of thing to kind of get it to work? And I'll be like, oh yeah, it's the focus, uh, attenuation focus, blah blah blah, right?
Right.
So attenuation listener focus, sorry. Um, but um, I want to try to make sure that I try to want to retain it as much as I can. So hence the reason why I'm kind of going a little bit slower on it. I'm try to figure out like certain scenarios for it, to try to give it a little bit more life than what they're really giving in this. So we know, what it's about. Again, we might not necessarily work with it until years down the line. We don't know, right?
Yeah.
It all depends on what we pick for our clone, which probably won't have much, if
Yeah.
anything.
I probably won't even
You
use
know,
this.
right? But we don't know what we might face when we start figuring out like what we want to do in terms of like making our own game, afterwards, after the clone. So, uh, like if we do something that is like you know, something similar to Metal Gear, but obviously not because we don't really want to get sued by the developers of Metal Gear or anything along
You
those
know,
lines. But
I can think of a
um,
situation in a game I had in mind some time ago.
hmm
Since none of the characters on my game are humans, none of them.
right, right. Um, so yeah, it's one of those things where it's like when we start making our own game, we'll probably be using some of these settings more, or even a lot more. You know, we might be using all these settings. You never know. It all depends on what we decide on building for our first official game. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, the attenuation reverb send, there's quite a bit here again. Then we have the attenuation occlusion. That's after that. That also has quite a bit. And the attenuation plugin settings after that. So, oof. We're getting closer to the end on this particular overall section, but obviously, as you
Yeah.
can see, there's a lot of information there.
Yeah.
So, we kind of got lucky with the fact that there was a lot of pictures, like, you know, kind of taking up a lot of the, spacing at the
Yeah.
very top of the article. But now that we're like really, you know, in deep on the overall discussions and stuff like that now, so that's interesting. So, all right, but I think that's going to be it for today's Unreal study session. Anything else that you want to maybe add to this, my friend, or discuss?
Not that I can think of right now. Like, no, like I say, it's like what you mentioned before. It's like for anything that we might have gotten wrong, or that we asked about some better explanation. Then to leave it down in the
Mm-hmm.
comments below, or maybe if they have a link to someone explaining this, maybe even showing with examples. Uh, Leave their links also in the comments below, and we'll have a look at it.
Yeah.
And we would talk about on the next session.
Yeah. I mean, we're if someone like links a video to us about like, hey, this guy gives a really good example about how the focus and the listener focus works, then that would be great. Obviously, we're gonna have to be careful with doing anything like a full-on reaction to it because again, we don't really want to incur like any kind of copyright or infringement along those lines. Um, but I mean, we'd be willing to watch those videos offline and
Yeah.
maybe come back in a discussion afterwards and kind of discuss it more, you know, depending on depending on the topic and all that. Um, so again, if you have any kind of videos or comments that kind of explain anything, even if it's like several videos back, don't hold back there, folks. Don't be afraid to um, help us out with very useful information because we might not know, we might not have learned very well in that regard because we're not necessarily sound engineers. We haven't like studied this for years. Um, so any help would be welcomed. So, all right, but I think that's where we're gonna go ahead and close on down. Blackheart's gonna head off and grab himself some food. I'm gonna stick around and uh, get some videos up and maybe start looking in on that website a little bit more. Maybe. I don't know. It depends on how long it takes me to get videos up, but I'll see about trying to look in on that a little bit more. It's been a long time since I touched it, so it's gonna be like, oh yeah, this is what I did. But that's what's coming up for myself, and then of course, in about an hour from now here on stream, we'll be, I'll be starting up a single player Terraria for a short time, and then we will switch. Um, Blackheart and I will switch on over to a modded version of Terraria for tonight's stream. So look
Yep.
forward to that. So,
Alright. I
um,
am off to get some food.
all right, man. You have yourself a good night, and I'll catch you later.
Yep. See you in a
All
little
right.
bit.
All right. See you a
Bye.
bit. Bye.
Okay, I am out of the stage. Well, so okay, I mean, I understood like some of it. Like, I was able to think of a good example, which was like Metal Gear's directional microphone. For those that haven't played a Metal Gear game, there is a tool of a directional microphone. Like, as if you're aiming at it at a character with it, you will hear like if it was like, standing right next to you. But the moment you start moving away, the volume like drops fast. And you have to adjust yourself every once in a while because some of the targets are either moving or another character walked in from somewhere else and you can barely hear him or something like that. I can think of in a game I have in mind for some time in the future. I haven't yet fully decided on the story because I'm no writer. I need to figure out something. Like I said, there were no humans or anything on the game I have in mind. And well, some of those characters actually have big ears. Maybe have them like use them like animals would to move them around, and there use that form of focused listener. Just out of getting like the audio better, just as if they were like right on. If I was like standing right next to them as they were talking, but I'm kind of a ways away from them. That's what I was thinking. But again, like I'm no writer, I still haven't figured out what the story's even gonna be. Like I have some of the characters in mind. I kind of have the setting of it, even the theme, but not the story. The story's a work in progress. Hopefully, I have something in mind for sometime in the future to work with. But for now, this is gonna be it for now. I am off to get some food. I'll be back in roughly an hour or so. We'll see. So you can just eat peacefully, use the bathroom if I have to, take care of the dishes. And we'll be back with some modded Terraria, so see you all in a little bit. Bye bye for now!